The woman on the bench night was unusually cold for Los Angeles. The kind of cold that slipped quietly under coats and settled deep into bones. The streets were quiet, the city lights blinking in the distance like tired eyes. Most people had long gone home. Most people had warmth, a roof, a bed. But on the edge of Sunset Boulevard, near an old rusted bus stop, someone wasn't home. Someone didn't have a bed. A woman sat there, barely moving, curled up on a wooden bench with her knees hugged to her chest. Her hospital shoes were soaked, and her thin jacket wasn't enough. She was asleep, but not peacefully. It was the kind of sleep people fall into when they're too tired to keep going, but too afraid to let go. Just down the street, a black motorcycle pulled up and came to a quiet stop under a street lamp. The rider removed his helmet and shook out his hair. It was Keanu Reeves. No entourage, no cameras, just him. He liked riding alone at night. It helped him think. It helped him breathe. But tonight something was different. His eyes caught the shape on the bench, a figure hunched in exhaustion. He looked closer. It wasn't someone high or drunk, as people might assume in this part of town. It was someone broken, tired in a different way. Keanu parked the bike, slowly approached, not wanting to scare her. As he got closer, he saw her hospital ID tag had fallen from her coat. He picked it up. It read Elena, RN. He paused. A nurse, a healer, someone who probably spent her whole shift helping others, and now she was out here, alone, asleep in the cold. He saw a faint bruise on her wrist. Her hands were red from the cold. And then he noticed her phone cracked screen, low battery, in her sleep. Her lips were trembling. She didn't even stir as he gently draped his own thick coat over her shoulders. Keanu didn't wake her. He didn't take a selfie. He didn't leave a note. He just stood there, watching for a while, trying to understand something he couldn't yet name. Finally, he stepped back, returned to his bike, and drove off into the night with a strange heaviness in his chest. The next morning, Elena woke up with a start. Her shift had ended 10 hours ago. She had fallen asleep waiting for a bus that never came. She rubbed her eyes, surprised to find a coat on her. Not hers, much heavier. Warm. She looked around, confused. There was no one, just the usual traffic starting to move. Her heart raced. Had someone helped her? She clutched the coat and stood up slowly, feeling a little embarrassed, a little overwhelmed. She checked her phone. One missed call. Her son. She called back immediately, her voice shaking. Her thoughts scrambled. Her boy was fine, still at her neighbor's, waiting for her to pick him up. But she felt something deeper that morning. Not just tiredness, not just guilt. She felt invisible, like she was disappearing. Later that day, Keanu sat in a quiet diner, sipping coffee. He couldn't shake the image of Elena. The way her fingers were curled like she was still holding a patient's chart. The way her chest rose and fell slowly, like even in sleep she wasn't resting. He didn't know her, but something inside him said he needed to, not for pity, not for fame, but because he saw in her a kind of quiet suffering he'd known himself. The kind that doesn't scream, the kind that doesn't ask for help. Across the street, two teenagers laughed loudly as they passed a homeless man. One threw an empty cup at him. Keanu turned away. He'd seen too much of that. Too much cruelty, too much dismissal. He finished his coffee, left a tip that was more than generous, and walked outside, thinking. Meanwhile, Elena made it to the hospital for her next shift. She was 5 minutes late. Her supervisor gave her that look, the kind that says again. Without needing to speak, she nodded silently, put on her gloves, and got to work. No one asked her why she was late. No one noticed the coat. No one noticed anything. 12 hours passed in a blur of patients, alarms, and exhaustion. When she clocked out, she sat in the break room, holding the coat close. Inside the pocket, she found something she hadn't seen before, a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a note, just a drawing, hand-sketched. It showed a woman sitting on a bench under a streetlight, wrapped in a coat, and above the sketch, just one sentence written in soft pencil: "You matter more than you know." Her eyes welled up. She didn't understand it. She didn't know who left it. But in that moment, she felt seen, truly seen. Back at his home, Keanu stared at the wall of his studio. The sketchbook sat open in front of him. He had drawn it the moment he returned home. Not to make art, not to sell, just to process, to feel. He remembered something his mother once told him: when someone's in pain, don't just feel sorry for them. Do something. Even if it's small, even if it's silent. He had done something small, but it didn't feel like enough. The next morning, Keanu dressed differently. Not the motorcycle jacket, not the all-black outfit. He wore jeans and a plain shirt, pulled his hair back into a bun, and put on glasses. The kind of outfit that made him look less like a movie star and more like a quiet man from the neighborhood. He stepped out with a purpose. He wasn't going to wait for the world to notice Elena. He was going to find her again. And this time, he would do something that would change everything. The quiet search sun was just beginning to rise as Keanu walked past a flower shop that had just opened its shutters. The air smelled like wet pavement and early hope. He carried a small notebook in his pocket and wore a face that looked like any other man starting his day. No one recognized him. He liked it that way. Today, he wasn't an actor. He was just a man who had seen someone suffer quietly and couldn't stop thinking about it. He walked the streets near the hospital, checking benches, passing by coffee stands, pausing at bus stops. His eyes scanned gently, not in a hurry, not searching in desperation, but with quiet purpose. He didn't even know what he'd say if he found her. He just knew he wanted to. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, Elena stood at the supply cabinet, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to count the gauze packets. She hadn't slept properly in nights, even when she did close her eyes. She felt like her brain was still in the emergency room. Machines beeping, babies crying, people whispering, dying, begging, and through all of it, she kept replaying that one sentence in her head: "You matter more than you know." It didn't feel like a lie. It didn't feel like pity. It felt real, and that scared her more than anything. Because what if it was the only kindness she'd feel this week? Her co-worker Maria noticed her rubbing her temples and came over. "Hey, you okay?" she asked. Elena nodded, but didn't answer. Maria gave her a small smile and handed her a protein bar. "You didn't eat lunch yesterday," she said softly. Elena took it with a whisper of thanks. She wanted to cry, not because of the bar, but because someone noticed. Someone cared, even in a small way. Across town, Keanu stepped into a local diner, the same one he'd sat in yesterday. The waitress remembered him. "Back again, Hud," she smiled. He smiled back, asked for coffee, and pulled out the sketch he had made. He showed it to her quietly. "Do you know her?" he asked, pointing at the nurse in the drawing. The woman looked for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I think she comes in here sometimes. Tired-looking girl, always orders tea, sits in the corner with her feet up." Keanu felt his breath catch. "Does she still come?" he asked. The woman shrugged. "Haven't seen her in a few days, but I think she works over at Mercy General." Keanu folded the sketch gently and nodded. "Thank you," he said. Then he left a $20 tip for a $2 coffee and walked out. At the hospital, Elena finally finished her shift. Her legs ached. Her chest felt tight. She walked out the front doors into the fading daylight, holding the coat close around her. She couldn't afford a new one yet. And somehow, this coat, it made her feel safe, seen. Whoever gave it to her, they hadn't taken anything. They hadn't asked anything. They just gave. And in a life full of taking, of working long hours, of giving and giving and giving, this felt like a breath of air. She didn't know that just across the street, Keanu was watching her from behind. A row of parked cars. He didn't approach, not yet. He wasn't sure how. Part of him didn't want to ruin it. What if she got scared? What if she thought he was being weird? So he just watched her walk slowly to the bus stop. She looked so tired, not weak, but worn, like a light that had been burning too long. She sat down, pulled her knees in, and rested her head against the bench rail. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She just existed. Keanu pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. He wrote, "There's a kind of strength that doesn't look like muscles or shouting. It looks like silence, like a woman sitting alone after saving lives all day, not asking for anything." Then he closed his phone, took a deep breath, and walked across the street. Elena noticed someone standing in front of her. She looked up slowly. Her eyes widened, but she didn't scream. She didn't say anything at first, because something about him looked familiar. Not from a magazine, not from a movie, but from that night. Keanu smiled softly. "You forgot your coat," he said. She looked down at it, then back at him. "It was you." He nodded. She stood up slowly. "Why?" He paused, then answered quietly. "Because you look like someone who gives everything. And maybe you needed someone to give something back." Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't cry hard. Just one or two tears fell. Then she covered her mouth and sat back down. Keanu didn't sit next to her. He just stood there. "What's your name?" she asked after a moment. "Keanu," he said, then smiled. "Just Keanu." She nodded. "I'm Elena." "I know," he said. "I saw your name tag." "Hope that's not weird." She laughed a little. It was soft, but real, the first real laugh in a long time. And in that laugh, something opened up. They sat there for a few minutes in silence. No fame, no questions, no assumptions. Just two people on a bench. Finally, Keanu said, "Can I buy you dinner?" Elena looked at him for a long moment, not because of who he was, but because no one had asked her that in years. She nodded slowly. "Only if it's soup." She whispered, "I'm too tired to chew." He smiled wide. "Soup it is." And as they walked together toward the diner, just a man and a nurse, just two souls that happened to find each other. Neither of them knew that tomorrow something would happen that would make headlines across the country, not because of fame, but because of something much deeper, something no one expected. Soup and Secret's little diner on Magnolia wasn't fancy. The lights buzzed softly overhead, and the booths were worn from years of elbows and conversations. The waitress didn't recognize Keanu this time. Maybe it was the glasses. Maybe it was the way he carried himself. Or maybe it was because tonight, he wasn't famous tonight. He was just a man trying to understand a stranger who had quietly changed something inside him. Elena slid into the booth with a tired sigh. Her hospital shoes squeaked against the floor. Keanu sat across from her, placing his sketchbook on the side of the table without saying a word. They both ordered soup, chicken noodle for her, lentil for him. She didn't say much at first. Neither did he. But the silence didn't feel awkward. It felt like a kind of safety. So she finally spoke, her fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic mug of tea. "You're really you?" He smiled gently. "Only when cameras are rolling. The rest of the time, I'm just a guy who likes motorcycles and quiet places." She smiled back, a little embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said. "You're probably used to people asking for something." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, always something. A shift swap, an extra patient, a favor, even when I'm off the clock." Keanu stirred his soup thoughtfully. "When was the last time someone asked what you needed?" She looked at him for a long moment, then answered, "I don't remember." The truth in that sentence sat heavy between them. He leaned back. "I saw you that night because I wasn't sleeping either. I've had those nights where your body's tired but your heart won't shut off." Elena looked down at her bowl. "Mine's been like that for months." "You have kids?" he asked gently. "One," she said, and her voice softened. "Isaac. He's 8, sweet, sensitive, likes to paint, hates ketchup, smart, but is scared sometimes. I think he sees how tired I am." Keanu listened carefully. He wasn't just hearing her words. He was holding them. "Where's his dad?" he asked, cautiously. "Gone," she said, "before Isaac was born. Said he wasn't ready." I believed him. Now I'm the nurse, the mom, the provider, the everything, and still, sometimes I feel like nothing. Keanu didn't try to fix it. He didn't offer advice. He just nodded, like someone who understood loneliness in ways most people never saw. Outside the diner, a few people walked past the window. One woman stopped, looked in, stared for a second like she might recognize him, then shook her head and kept walking. It didn't matter. This wasn't about Keanu. This was about her Elena. She took a deep breath and said something she hadn't told anyone. "I was going to quit. Tomorrow. I'd made up my mind. I was too tired. I thought Maybe I'll just take a break, go somewhere far. Maybe let someone else carry the weight for once. Keanu's eyes didn't change. His voice stayed soft. And now, Elena looked at him. Her face wasn't glowing. It wasn't fixed. But something had shifted now. I don't know. But maybe I can wait one more day. They finished their soup slowly. Outside, the wind had picked up. Clouds were starting to gather. A storm was coming. When they stepped out, Keanu offered to walk her to the bus stop. But she paused. I think. The last bus already left. He looked at her for a moment. Then I'll drive you. She hesitated. Are you sure? He smiled. You saved lives today. The least I can do is save your feet. They got into his car, an old, modest sedan, not the kind of luxury anyone would expect from him. It was clean but not flashy. Comfortable, humble. He drove through the quiet streets, and Elena gave directions slowly, pointing out places that held small pieces of her life. The grocery store she only visited on payday. The park where Isaac played after school. The old library where she once cried in the bathroom because she thought she couldn't make it as a nurse. He didn't speak much, just listened. When they pulled up to her building, it was late. The apartment complex was simple, clean but aging. Laundry lines hung outside a few balconies. One window had Christmas lights still hanging. Even though it was April. Thank you, she said softly, unbuckling her seatbelt. For everything. Keanu nodded. Will you be okay? She smiled faintly. I think so. She stepped out and was halfway to the door when she turned back. You don't have to do anything more, she said. This was already more kindness than I've felt in a long time. Keanu rolled down the window and said, sometimes, kindness is the only thing that keeps the world from falling apart. She nodded, then went inside. Keanu sat in the car for a while, staring at the building. He didn't know what it was yet, but something about this felt bigger than one night. Something inside him said this wasn't finished, that the world had brought them together for a reason. And he didn't know that upstairs, in her tiny apartment, Elena walked into Isaac's room and saw him sleeping. His hands were wrapped around a small painting, one she hadn't seen before. It showed a woman sitting on a bench under a street lamp, and in the background, a man walking away. Did you draw this? She whispered. Isaac stirred and mumbled. I saw it in a dream, Mommy. She stood there, frozen. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Something was coming, something no one expected. The painting and the phone call. Elena stared at the little painting in Isaac's hands for a long time. She had no idea how to explain what she was feeling. Her son had never seen that scene. He wasn't there at the bus stop, and yet there it was, the exact image. The bench, the lamp, her, and the man in the distance. It was all there, like Isaac had painted her memory without even knowing it. She gently took the painting from his hands and placed it on the nightstand. Her fingers shook a little, not from fear, but from something deeper, something she couldn't name. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "Good night, baby," then walked quietly to the small kitchen, sat at the table, and stared at the wall. Her heart was still beating fast. The storm outside had started. Rain tapped against the window in slow, steady rhythms. But inside her, everything felt loud. Her phone buzzed suddenly, pulling her back to reality. She checked it. A number she didn't recognize. For a moment she froze, then answered. Hello? There was silence for 2 seconds. Then a man's voice came through. Is this Elena Garcia? Yes, she said, confused. My name is Simon Lee. I work with the Los Angeles Times. This might sound strange, but we received an anonymous tip about a story involving you and Keanu Reeves. Would you be willing to talk? Elena's breath caught. What? She whispered. We received a sketch, the man continued, along with a message describing how a nurse, exhausted after a shift, was found asleep at a bus stop, and how a stranger offered his coat without asking for anything in return. There was no name, but the sketch looked a lot like you. Elena's mouth went dry. She glanced at the coat hanging by the door, the same coat from that night. She said nothing. We're not trying to expose anything, the voice said. We just believe people need stories like this, stories that restore a little hope. Elena finally spoke, her voice low. I didn't ask for attention. I understand, he replied. But sometimes, Stories like yours help people who feel invisible, and right now, the world could use a reminder that kindness still exists." She didn't respond. Her hand trembled slightly as she ended the call. Meanwhile, miles away, Keanu stood at the window of his home. Rain streamed down the glass. His phone sat on the table. Screen lit up. He had received a message from someone he hadn't spoken to in years, his old friend Liam, a documentary filmmaker. The message read, "I saw your sketch in the newspaper draft. Tell me it's real." Keanu sighed. He hadn't planned for this. He didn't even send the sketch to the media. He had given it to a young artist he mentored, just to inspire him. He hadn't expected it to end up in a newsroom. He picked up the phone and called Liam. "It's real," he said. Liam's voice was quiet. "You're doing something, aren't you?" "I don't know," Keanu replied. "I just saw her, and something in her reminded me of what it feels like to keep going when no one sees you." "I'm filming a new piece," Liam said. "It's about invisible strength, people who carry the weight of the world in silence. I want to include her. I want to include you." Keanu paused, "Only if she agrees." That night, neither of them slept well. Elena sat at the table until sunrise. Keanu paced the floor of his living room until his dog curled up next to him and forced him to sit down. The rain didn't stop. It was as if the sky itself was cleansing, something washing away what no longer needed to be hidden. The next morning, when Ellen arrived at work, she was surprised to find the hospital lobby unusually quiet. Her co-worker Maria ran up to her, wide-eyed. "Did you see it?" "See what?" Elena asked. Maria pulled out her phone and opened a news site. There it was, a sketch of a nurse under a street lamp. The headline read, "Unnamed Nurse's Quiet Moment of Pain. Touched Hollywood Actor Kindness Leaves City Speechless." Elena felt her knees weaken. She walked to the staff lounge and sat down. Everyone was staring at her, not with judgment, not with mocking, but with something else, something gentler. Drive Patel, one of the older physicians, approached her. "That was you, wasn't it?" he asked softly. She looked up, tears already gathering. "I didn't mean for anyone to know." "Maybe," he said, "but maybe people needed to." She didn't know what to say. In the middle of her shift, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a number labeled Keanu. Double quotes, "I didn't plan this. I just wanted the world to see what I saw. If you're angry, I understand." She read it 3 times, then replied, "I'm not angry, just overwhelmed. I don't know what to do now." His response came within seconds. "Do nothing, just keep being you. And if you want, maybe let the world follow for once." That night, she went home and found a letter taped to her apartment door. It was from her landlord. She braced herself, expecting bad news. Instead, it read, "Your rent for the next 3 months has been paid by an anonymous donor. Thank you for what you do. The city needs more hearts like yours." She covered her mouth with both hands, sank to the floor, and cried, not because she felt broken, but because, for the first time in a long time, she felt held. Meanwhile, Keanu sat down with Liam to record something simple. Not a movie, not an interview, just a voice message to the nurses, the janitors, the quiet fighters. "You matter, and I hope this story reminds people that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life." For and far away, a boy named Isaac watched the rain through the window. He picked up a new brush, dipped it in yellow, and painted a sun breaking through clouds. Something was changing, something beautiful, and it was only just beginning. The spotlight and the silence be the time the second article hit the internet. Elena's name was no longer hidden. Someone had leaked a photo, one from inside the hospital, taken without her knowing. It wasn't a flattering photo. Her eyes were tired, her posture slouched, but something in her face, something raw and real, caught people's attention. The article titled her the Invisible Angel of Mercy General, and just like that, her world changed. Calls started pouring in. Media, local radio, even a major talk show. People wanted her story. They wanted to know what it felt like to be saved by a movie star. They wanted a headline. But what they didn't understand was that Elena didn't feel like she'd been saved. She still lived in a small apartment. She still walked to work when the bus didn't come. She still counted every dollar. She didn't want a spotlight. She just wanted to breathe. Keanu, on the other hand, stayed silent. He didn't go to the press. He didn't give interviews. He simply texted her every day. Small things, how's Isaac? Or did you eat today? Or sending you strength. Never pressure, never expectations. Just presence. One night, after her shift, Elena stood outside the hospital staring at her phone. She had received a message from a network producer. They were offering $10,000 for a live interview. They promised a limo, hair, makeup, everything. They said it could lead to book deals, speaking tours. They said the world needed her story. But what they didn't ask was whether she needed any of it. She didn't reply. Instead, she walked to the park across the street, sat on a bench near the swings, and called Keanu. When he picked up, his voice was soft. You okay? I don't know, she said. Everything's happening so fast. People want my story. But I don't even know what my story is. Keanu was quiet for a moment, then said, your story isn't what happened at the bus stop. It's every day you show up. It's every patient you calm. Every shift you finish when your body's screaming to quit. You don't owe anyone anything. Elena's throat tightened. What if I say no to all of it? Then I'll take you out for soup again, he said, and she laughed. In her apartment that night, Isaac showed her a new painting. This one had color-bright reds and yellows. It showed a nurse standing in the middle of a hospital hallway, with shadows behind her and light pouring from the ceiling. There were small people in the corners, patients, doctors, family, but the light was only touching her. Why is she glowing? Elena asked. Isaac said, because she's the only one who didn't stop walking. Her eyes filled with tears. Across town, Keanu sat in his home with Liam. The documentary had grown. Not just about Elena now. Liam had found 5 other people quiet. Workers, people who never made headlines. A janitor who read to children at night. A delivery driver who paid for strangers' groceries. A teacher who taught for free on weekends. And in the center of it all was Elena, not as a celebrity, but as a symbol. Not because she had done something huge, but because she had kept going. Liam turned to Keanu and said, you know what's funny? This whole thing started with a coat. Keanu smiled. Maybe all big things start with something small. The next day, Elena was invited to a charity gala hosted by a well-known foundation. At first, she said no, but when she learned the event was about raising funds for underpaid hospital workers, she agreed. She wore a simple dress, nothing expensive, nothing glamorous. She didn't get her nails done. She didn't wear makeup. But when she walked in, the whole room turned, not because of the dress, but because of her. Keanu was already there, not in a tuxedo, just a dark shirt and quiet shoes. He nodded when he saw her, didn't approach, just watched her speak to people, humble as ever. He could see the nerves in her eyes, the way she touched her necklace when anxious. But she held her own, not because she was used to it, but because she was honest. When it was her turn to speak on stage, the crowd hushed. She didn't have a speech, just words. I'm not used to this, she said softly. I'm not a hero. I'm just tired. Tired of being overlooked. Tired of pretending I'm not drowning some days. But I show up. I show up because the people in those hospital beds need someone who doesn't walk away. And because my son needs someone who doesn't give up. The room was silent. She looked out and saw Keanu in the back, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on hers. You asked what my story is, she continued. It's this, it's showing up. Even when no one's watching, the crowd stood, not clapping like fans, but rising like witnesses. That night, as they stood outside the gala under a canopy of soft yellow lights, Keanu handed her something. A new sketch. This one showed a nurse holding a lantern in the dark, lighting the path for others. She looked at it, then at him. Thank you, she whispered. No, he said. Thank you. And just as she was about to ask what came next, a black car pulled up beside them. The door opened, and inside sat a woman neither of them had ever met. But what she said next would change everything. The final light. The black car sat quietly under the glow of the streetlight. The door stayed open, and inside was a woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen many lifetimes. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just a dark suit and a warm smile. Elena and Keanu stood still, unsure. The night had already been full of emotion, speeches, clapping, memories, and now this. The woman leaned slightly out of the car and said, "Elena Garcia?" Elena stepped forward cautiously. "Yes, my name is Evelyn Ross," she said. "I'm the founder of the Hope Initiative. We create care programs for overworked nurses and emergency workers. Someone sent us your story, and we'd like to speak with you." Elena blinked. "Me? Why?" Evelyn gestured toward the seat beside her. "I'd rather explain inside. Both of you can join if you'd like." Keanu looked at Elena. "Your call." Elena nodded. Something inside her told her to trust it. The car ride was quiet. Soft music played, an old piano melody that felt like a memory. Evelyn sat with perfect posture, but her voice was kind and without pressure. "I was a nurse once," she said softly, "back before these programs existed. Back when women like you were expected to carry the weight of the world and smile while doing it. I burned out, collapsed in the middle of a shift. It took me years to recover, years to find myself again. So I built this foundation for those still walking through fire." She turned toward Elena. "We've been looking for someone. Not a spokesperson, not a celebrity. Someone real, someone with scars and heart. We want you to help design the new national mental health model for nurses. We'll give you a paid sabbatical, a team, a seat at the table. All you need to do is say yes." Elena's heart pounded. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from hope. "Why me?" she asked. Evelyn smiled. "Because you didn't ask for any of this, but you showed up anyway." Keanu looked out the window quietly. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. By the time they reached Evelyn's building, Elena knew her answer. "I'll do it," she said. Her voice steady, "but only if we include real voices, not just doctors, janitors, interns, assistants, all of them." Evelyn smiled wider. "We wouldn't have it any other way." In the weeks that followed, Elena's life changed completely, but not in the way fame changes people. She still lived in the same apartment. She still walked Isaac to school. But now, she was traveling once a month to help rewrite the way hospitals cared for caregivers. She spoke not with scripts, but with truth. People listened. They didn't just hear her, they felt her. As for Keanu, he stayed close but never loud. He showed up at Isaac's school art show with flowers. He helped Elena fix her broken kitchen sink. He stayed after meetings to help carry chairs. He never tried to become the center. He just made sure she never stood alone again. One morning, months later, Elena stood at the same bus stop where it all began. The bench had been freshly painted. A small plaque had been added beneath the streetlight. It read, "For the quiet ones who keep the world going." She sat down on the bench. The wind was cool but soft, and next to her, Isaac placed a folded piece of paper in her hand. Another painting. This one showed a woman standing in the rain, arms outstretched, light bursting from behind her. And beside her, a man in a dark coat holding an umbrella, not over himself, but over her. "Do you like it, Mommy?" he asked. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I think it's the best one yet." And behind them, Keanu stood quietly, hands in his pockets, watching the woman who had taught him something he never expected, that sometimes the strongest people in the world don't wear armor or speak loudly. They wear tired shoes, carry aching hearts, and keep showing up anyway. And sometimes all they need is someone to sit beside them, someone to remind them, you matter more than you know.